Okay. So the Gemara ended up saying that Reb Meir held by us, Goyzin Shaykh got to Mazid. Why? Because it's Derabanan, and words of the Rabban need chizik, but by the Raisa, where the words of the Torah don't need chizik, like by Bishul B'Shabbos, there Reb Meir wouldn't be Goyzer. But by Avodah Zarah, like Menasech, which is very, very severe, there we are Goyzer. Rabbi Yehuda took the opposite viewpoint. Rabbi Yehuda says that by a Daraisa, that's where I'm Goyzer, because Daraisa is a serious affair. By Rabban, I don't have to be Goyzer. And by Avodah Zarah, I'm not Goyzer, because by Avodah Zarah, I'm not Goyzer, is because since it's so chomer, Mivdal B'di Limine, which took us to the bottom of Nun Gimel Lamed Beis, the Reb Meir ad Reb Meir b'Daraisa. Then we said that Reb Meir by a Daraisa is not Goyzer. That's why he wasn't Goyzer by Bishul B'Shabbos. But we had a kasha because by Shvius, if someone plants on Shvius, Reb Meir said Baby Shogi, Baby Bezid Yaakov. So that seems to be a stira. The problem is the very same brisa where Reb Meir said B'Shvius, your Goyzer Shogi got to Mezid. In that very same brisa, the brisa is by Shogi, by Shabbos, you're not Goyzer. So the Gemara says, don't ask me a kasha from Shvius to our case. Mineu Bey, in this brisa, Reb Meir contradicts himself because Shvius is deraisa, Shabbos is deraisa. By Shvius he's Goyzer, by Shabbos he's not. So the Gemara answered, the difference is because when people have to assess what year pears grew in, why is it important to know what year pears grew in? Because that determines if it's Arla, if it grew in the first 3 years, it's Arla. If it grew in the 4th year, it's not Rebai. So a person has to calculate which year it's grown in, meaning people will always know which year something was grown in, which means, even though really we wouldn't be Goyzer by Deraisa, but here you're going to have a product that grew, and for the rest of its life, if it's a tree lamashal, forever and ever and ever, people will know the year that it started growing in, because they have to record that to know when it was no longer Orla, when it was no longer Levi. So you can have now a tree that everyone's going to know this was planted on Shvius. That's going to reduce our respect for Shemitah. Therefore, we make a knas that it has to be uprooted. But Shabbos, nobody needs to know exactly what day something was planted on. So no one's going to know, oh, this was planted on Shabbos. 3 years later, who's going to know that this was planted on Shabbos? How could you possibly know? By one day, you can know when it was planted. Therefore, that defaults to a standard deraisa. Reb Meir holds by standard deraisa, you're not going to Shagir to Mezid unless there's a pressing reason. By Shvius is a pressing reason because everyone's going to know you have a plant here that was grown on Shvius, which took us just to the top of Nun Dalet Amud Aleph. Vein Monyan l'Shabbosos. That's where we're up to. Davar Acher. So let me just take a quick break for a second.
Good places. Did you ever find the one that
It's broken, but it's on it. Yeah, the kids broke it. No, but it's recorded. People record it on purpose because they need to know if it's Orla. People bedafka focus on when it is, but people are going to remember. Also, the Gemara is going to get into that now. Very, very good point. The Gemara is going to discuss that right now. Exactly that argument. Excellent power. Davar Acher. Or we have another reason. That's my Davar Acher. But no, we have another reason why Reb Meir would be Goyzer on Shvius, but not on Shabbos, if something was planted illegally. Because nechshidu Yisrael ala Shvius, nechshidu ala Shabbos. Rachman l'Tzlan, people keep Shabbos. No, that's not. I'm sorry, that's not the Rachman l'Tzlan part. Rachman l'Tzlan, people don't take Shvius seriously. So even though people take Shabbos seriously, they don't take Shemitah seriously. So the Rabbanon were more machmer that you have to uproot something planted on Shemitah more than they would be machmer on Shabbos, where they allow something to remain if you planted it on Shabbos b'shayig. My davar acher, as Rashi explains, why did we need a second explanation for a mayor? Normally, when the Gemara brings a second answer, it must be because there's something lacking, there was an issue, a problem with the first stanza. So Kamar Hachi Kamar, and I believe this is what the Chaim said. Hachi Kamar, V'chi Tema Shabbos Nami. Sometimes you need to remember that something was planted on Shabbos as well, which means forever and ever, people looking at this tree will know it was planted on Shabbos, and you have the same problem. And therefore, you can't say that's the first errand. So you have to the second errand that there are more machmar and shvius because we have to show people that we take it seriously. In what would be the circumstances where we would know precisely that something was planted on Shabbos? Because Zimin, the Mikla, Yoim Lamed b'Shabbos. I think that's what Chaim was saying. Maybe the 30th day of Shabbos. Now, you count something year 1, year 2, year 3. How long before the end of the year does something have to be planted for us to consider it that this year is year 1? For instance, we plant a tree. Its fruits that grow for the first 3 years are Arla. When does it change from first year to second year? When is Rosh Hashanah Leilanos? When did it switch from first year to second year? Right before the end of the year. And therefore, in order for it to be considered as having grown already in the prior year, which means the prior year is number 1, which gets out of the cycle of your Orla and Revive more quickly 1 year earlier. It's like, what's the cutoff date to get into school, or else your kid has to wait for next year? The cutoff date is 30 days before Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, Zimnin the Mikla Yoim Lamed b'Shabbos, it'll work out the day 30 is on Shabbos, meaning the Idatahu Yoima who desolka leishata. If it was planted on that day, which was 30 days before the end of the year, which happens to be Shabbos, then we'll say that this is year 1. V'loi, but if you planted as much as a day later, you pass the cutoff date, and now you lose a whole year in counting because now you have another full year of Orla. So then you're going to remember precisely what day it was planted. Let's see Rashi, who gives a detailed explanation. Sometimes you are going to count the week itself, the day of Shabbos. The Tanya we learned. What if you planted a tree 30 days before Rosh Hashanah? The Allah is also Loishana Lishnei Orla. You can count this as year 1. That means you'll get your pears edible a year early. It makes a very big difference. I just read those words. The Shloishim Yoim Bashana Chashuvin Shana. Exactly. If something was already planted 30 days in the year, we consider it like it has a full year. And therefore, the second benefit is we look at it like you didn't plant it on the Shemitah year, you planted it on the year prior. But if you planted it a week before the Shemitah year, that's already a problem. Also loy shana. So therefore, it doesn't count as year-end for Arla. And like Chaim did, the number 2 is also l'kaimon b'shus. Hilchach. So now that we know the halacha, let's see how the case plays out. Hilchach. Zimnin the Shabbos zu shenata zeh. Sometimes the Shabbos that this fellow illegally planted this tree, even though it was only shoygig, but he planted it, was exactly Yom Shloishim Lefnei Rosh Hashanah. It was the 30th day before Rosh Hashanah, which means he just got in under the cutoff date, under the wire, and now you're going to count that as year 1. The Iav Botzer, but if it was only 29 days from year end, the Iav Botzer Yoima, it wouldn't count as the year. And therefore, and now when it comes time for it to leave its Arla cycle and its revised cycle, can you imagine if this was if this planting on Shabbos was counted? So that means really after only 2 years and 30 days, he can start eating the pears, and he has to redeem as revive. But it's already the 4th year. To everybody else, it looks like he's only waiting 2 years. So now that he's eating from the pears only 2 years after they were planted, well, I remember everyone's going to ask, how could he eat pears after 2 years until Arla? So he tells them, you know why? Because I planted them 30 days before Rosh Hashanah. So everyone pulls up their calendars on their smartphones. 30 days ago. That was Shabbos. That was Shabbos. So automatically, when he tells them that no, it's not 2 years old, it's 3 years old, because I planted it exactly 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, they're going to look it up on their calendars. They're going to see it was Shabbos. So now, long term, I mean, not forever and ever, but long term, at least during the Arla and Revive cycle, people are going to see that this was planted on Shabbos, and that's why it's not a good distinction. You can't argue why we're goyzer by Shvius and not by Shabbos, because sometimes by Shabbos it'll also be known for the future that this was planted on Shabbos. So for that, the Gemara said Tashma davar achar nechshadu Yisrael al shviyis. The ikal meichesh mitoich shadavar niker also lemishri netir b'shviyis. But v'loy nechshadu al Shabbosos v'afil yizacher v'yivada davar loy also lemishri netir also b'Shabbos. Even if people find out that this fellow planted on Shabbos improperly, it's not going to lead to a disregard of the cheshivos for Shabbos, because people know about Shabbos. But Shemitah, unfortunately, we became lax in its fulfillment, and therefore they made the Gzera. Gewaltig. I hear. I know. I know a different story for a Baruch Ber. Rahman was on the comments in those days. People were sitting in yeshiva and learning, but they were kafir. They were chapped around by the Enlightenment. They were chapped around by the Haskalah. So I don't know what's called enlightenment. It should be called endarkenment. So what happened was Baruch Ber was once walking by the dorm, and again I wasn't there, so I can't testify to the story. And he sees smoke coming out of the window of one of the dorm rooms. So Baruch Ber quickly barges in, and there's 3 bachim that are smoking Rahman al in yeshiva on Shabbos. So the first bachim got caught red-handed, and he said, I didn't even realize I was smoking. And he threw the cigarette down. The other bachim says, oh yeah, I completely forgot that today was Shabbos. The third bachim says, oh, I forgot to shut the window. Zok the Gemara, Tashma. Yeah. They'd like the London. There was a Yid once who used to come to the family here in the Bismarck, who was completely Chal Shabbos, but he was, he didn't think he came to learn.
Pretend it wasn't, so he waits another year. He waits another year.
You're suggesting he should wait another year?
So let's say
So you're saying make a different Gzera?
it's better than.
Why would he? I understand, but we make a Gzera because people are not going to wait another year. Yeah. Tashma.
Then he's going to, those people will put laptops, take their smartphone.
Tashma. Now we have to go to Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda like kasha. So what was shver in Rabbi Yehuda? Because Rabbi Yehuda told us that normally by the Raisa you are going to be geyser. Now let's have a look at Rabbi Yehuda over here. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer b'shviyis b'shagi yikayim b'mezid yaker. Here by a deraisa, Rabbi Yehuda said that you're not geyser. By the previous case of Mavashal b'Shabbos, Rabbi Yehuda said you are geyser. Yet here he says you're not geyser. B'Shabbos bein b'Shabbos bein b'shagi b'mezid yaker. So this is consistent with what he said earlier. But this is not consistent. B'shviyis b'shagi yikayim b'mezid yaker. You see, even by a deraisa, you're not geyser. So Zok Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda like kasha. The reason why it's not shver on Rabbi Yehuda is because ba'ashri Rabbi Yehuda chamir lehu shviyas. It happens to be that where Rabbi Yehuda lived, they were very concerned about shviyas. Therefore, by Shemitah, normally for a deraisa you're geyser, but in his city they didn't have to because people were very makbid on shviyas, so he didn't see a reason to be geyser. And here we have a story that illustrates how it was such a big deal. Shemitah people took very seriously. This fellow, I'm going to illustrate this with a story before we learn it, how it shows. There's a famous story with a guy in Satmar he was a Satmar Nechusid, and he was coming out of a movie theater, and his friend, the Satmar Nechusid, saw that one of his friends came out of a movie theater. So he says, "You go to the movies? I'm going to tell the Rebbe that you go to the movies." So the Chusid said back, "If you dare tell the Rebbe that I go to the movies, I'm going to tell the Rebbe that you learn Daf Yomi." Right? Daf Yomi. Because by the Satmar, you're not allowed Daf Yomi. Like the goodest thing, you're not allowed to do it. Right. So right. So if you tell the Rebbe that I came out of a movie, so you see they threatened each other with what was very severe. If you're going to threaten somebody, you're going to threaten somebody with something that's very severe in your culture. I'm going to stitch on the Rebbe won't care if you're Mechalal Shabbos. But if you learn that very, no one's going to care. Right? It's like a parody, right? It's a joke. So look at this story, how people accused each other. Somebody wanted to humiliate his friend. They tell him, you're not even a real Jew. You're a ger, the son of a ger. You're not even a real Jewish. Amar lei. So this fellow told him back, you don't consider me Jewish? I don't eat Shemitah pears like you. So if you see that's what the culture used, You see that in Rabbi Yehuda's generation, eating Shemitah berries was so bad, it was like a sapin learning Daf Yomi. Could you imagine how severe that was? So obviously you see what hakpada that was. If someone eats truma tameya, so let's think about it. How valuable is truma tameya? Not very, because all it could be used is to be used as fuel. So let's see Rashi. Tashma the Reb Meir v'Drabanan loikan nishoy. We said that Reb Meir, when they said the Rabbanan, they are kindness, because it's the Rabbanan that needs chizuk, and that's why by Metama, Medama, Menasach, he was goyzer. Now we're going to prove that Reb Meir is not goyzer by a Rabban. So let's have a look. Achal truma b'shoygei v'afilu tameya. So if you ate truma tameya, so you didn't really do any severe damage. When you pay the kohen back, meshalam chulun tahirin. You have to pay chulun tahirin. Rashi tells us something very important about how you pay back when you eat truma. When Yisrael takes away the truma of a kohen, how did he pay back? Well, the Kaman Porach, soon the Gemara is going to ask, am I mishalam tahirin? If I ate truma tameya, which was useless, why do I have to pay back chulun tahirin, which is very valuable? At the least time we pay back chulun tameyin. So Zok Rashi, ha'oichel truma shoygei einim mishalamoy shalatzfur. That's the first rule. If you eat someone's truma b'shoygei, you never pay back in cash. You have to actually replace the product. Ve'einim mishalam truma, and you don't replace the product with truma ela chulun misukanin. You have to give him free chulun, meaning it's already hufresh to trumas and maestros. Va'yidei shlumin heinasin truma. When you give them to the kohen to pay back for the truma that you ate of his, it magically becomes truma. So again, if someone eats, if a Yisrael eats truma b'shoygeg, not only was he over a terrible b'laveira b'shoygeg, but he now damaged the kohen, so he has to pay back. The Gzeres HaKosov is he has to give him free and clean after tax dollars. He has to give him chulun tahirin, and then when he gives him the chulun tahirin, it becomes truma. Where do you know this from? This is Gzeres HaKosov. Shenemar b'nosan lakoyin es hakodesh, and we learn al yidei nisinasoi by giving it to the kohen, by giving the chulun to the kohen, nasu kodesh, that chulun becomes kodesh. Alma, you see from here, davar haroyu lochol olav shem truma be'inon v'loy mois. How do I know you have to pay back in produce, not in cash? Because the pasuk says it becomes truma. A dollar bill cannot become truma. Only produce to become truma. So it must be that the Torah, when the Torah says that what you give the truma becomes, what you give the kohen becomes truma, it must be you're giving the kohen something that can in fact become truma, such as produce. So this whole halacha that we just said applies to someone who eats truma b'shoygeg. But if one ate someone's truma b'mezid, then mishalam mois, then one pays in cash. So let's go back to our brisa. Tashma. I don't know anything yet. I'm just going to take it as it comes. Tashma. That's what it seems like. But we'll see in a second. Achal truma tameya mishalem chulin tahirin. What happens if shilem chulin tameyin? What if you didn't do your job? What if you paid with chulin tameyin? You were supposed to pay with chulin tahirin, and instead you paid with chulin tameyin. Ma, what is halacha? Amar Sumchis said, Mishum. Let me just get something out of the way over here. Amar Sumchis Mishum. Reb Meir b'shoygeg tashlumav tashlumin. If he did his b'shoygeg, meaning Rashi b'shoygeg shilim shlohayu yodeh shein tamein. He thought that he was paying back in chulin tahirin, but he was mistaken. In fact, what he thought was chulin tahirin was really chulin tamein. Tashlum of tashlumin. We say it is a good pay, and Rashi says upater be'elu, and that payment it absolves him of any other obligation. The heinasan truman tameya kamashacha, and the chulun tameyan transforms into truma tameya, which is what happens when you pay back, and it's exactly what he paid back with. That's not bad. I damaged truma tameya, and now I've replaced the truma tameya. But what if b'mezid? What if I knew this was chulun tameyin, and I knew I wasn't allowed to pay back with that? I knew I was supposed to pay back with chulun tahirin. Ain't tashlum of tashlumin is not good. And Rashi says, ain't tashlum of tashlumin l'kamei parach amai. The Gemara is going to ask soon, why not? But I'll call upon him. This is a case of Durabanan, because it's only Durabanan that we're making him pay, and nevertheless, we are geyser. So that is going to be our challenge to Reb Meir. But let's finish the brisa. I'm sorry. First of all, even if there was a Misa B'dei Shemayim, I don't know if there's coming with Rabbim by Misa B'dei Shemayim. Regardless, as Rashi says, Echad Shogi Bechad Meiser Tashlum of Tashlumin, they nasin Truma Umam and Koin. It will become Truma and Mam and Koin, and it'll be Truma Tameya. Vim Kiddush Ben Isha Mekudeshes. Lamai Nafka, meaning that it's Mam and Koin, if he was Mekadesh a woman with it. So a guy goes over with Truma that you cannot eat, you can only use it as fuel. He's like, Mekudeshes Li, with this charcoal briquette, at least you can use it to make yourself a hot steak or a hot dog tonight. That's really all you can use it for. It's Mekudeshes. It's if the Truma was oil, yeah. So the Chomer Echad Tashlum of Tashlumin, but nevertheless, the Chayzer Mishalem Chulum Tahir. We still require that he pays Chulum Tahir, even though technically it solved the problem. Why? Why is it Rashi Mishum Knas, and therefore Ve'ena Nas and Truma? The second payment that he has to give the Kohen of Chulum Tahir, that's not the real payment that the Torah says becomes Kodesh. That's not with the Nas from the Kodesh, because that already happened with the Chulum Tameis, but he still has to give it because of Xavier. And the Gemara, before we even ask our kasha on Reb Meir, we first need to understand better the brisa we just quoted. And the Gemara right away challenges to understand what this brisa is saying. If he paid wrongfully b'mezid, why wouldn't it work? Tavel bracha. If anything, you should bless him. Why? What did he eat from the kohen? He ate truma tameya. Truma tameya, the kohen can never eat, even when the kohen is tamei. And what did he pay back with? With chulun tamein, which is superior to what he damaged. Because you can eat chulun tameya. Of course, it becomes truma, so lamaisa it won't work. But lamaisa, what I'm giving, what you're receiving is taka truma tameya, because it transforms himself to become truma as you give it over. But lamaisa, what you took from yourself was something that was more valuable than what you ate. You took chulun tameya. So how could you complain? How could you say it's a bad thing? But we're talking about, does this product have value? It's valuable because you could sell it to a kohen that's tamei, but it does have value. So Zok Gemara Vavinamba, I'm looking at Rashi now. Vavinamba, b'mezid amayim tashlumin of shlumin. Am I consciously amazed? Why would you cancel him if he paid back with chulun tamein? Yes, he's supposed to give back chulun tayrin, and he gave back chulun tamein. But come on, he still gave more than he damaged. The hani tashlumin. Am I consciously amazed? The hani tashlumin haloi hezid with tashlumin gurun. He didn't give something worse than what he ate. The kohen would never be allowed to eat it. That's a matter of discussion. The Maranchik says it's not true. There's no chiv misa if you eat truma tameya when you're tamei. If you eat truma tahaya when you're tamei, maybe you chayiv misa, but not if you eat truma tameya when you're tamei. But anyway, you're not allowed to eat it. But the what is this fellow giving? He's giving something superior, something more valuable than what he actually ate. When he gives it to the kohen, it becomes truma, and the kohen doesn't have any additional benefit from it. The fact of the matter is, what the guy gave was something that was more valuable than what he took. He took chulun tamein. It's what he wanted to pay. He doesn't know that it became truma. He did his best. So therefore, we don't understand why there should be a knas by mezid. Why should the chum cancel? I want to finish the stop because we're middle of developing a kasha. So Zok to Gemara, Ella, in fact, this brayso is missing. We need to add some flavor, which would clarify things. If you ate truma tameya, then mishalam kol. Then you don't have to pay much. Anything you pay back will be good because the truma tameya is really only good to be used as fuel. As Rashi's kol shel chulun beitarn betamein. You can pay back lechatchila with anything at all because you ate something that had practically no value. But achal truma tahira, you ate truma tahira, now you've really damaged the kohen because you ate something that he could have eaten. Then mishalem chulun tahirin. Then you have to pay back chulun tahirin. What if you undercut the kohen instead of giving it back chulun tahirin, which you were supposed to? Shilaim chulun tamein mahu. What is halacha? If this was done b'shogig, tashlum of tashlumin. B'mezid ain't tashlum of tashlumin. And Rashi explained b'shogig tashlum of tashlumin on the second wide line. The ha'oichel truma shogig. Someone who eats truma b'shogig lefimida mishalim v'loy lefidamim. He has to pay not according to the value. You don't give him the cash value. You give him equivalent product. The avagav, the hach tuma, guria, me'ahida achal. Even though this is worse than what he ate, tashlumin hein midaraisa, it is a good tashlumin midaraisa. Rabbanan nami loy kansu hayig b'shagig b'tashlumin. And the Rabbanan are not going to cancel him. You paid back chulin tamein wrongfully. You gave back less than what you took. Since you did it b'shagig, the Rabbanan are not going to cancel you. But b'mezid, if you b'davka gave him back something that you knew was worth less than what you're damaging, sheyada shetmein in Rashi says, then ain't tashlumin tashlumin. Why the kansu Rabbanan shemischaven lahafsid koin? So here you clearly see that by a Rabbanan, where Rab Meir in our mission says you're koinish shagig atu mezid, here you're not koinish shagig atu mezid. The Zok Gemara b'chachamim ma'amrim echad zeh v'echad tashlum of tashlumin v'chayzer u'mishalem chulun tahirin. V'amar b'acha b'reid Ravika. What is the machlokes here? Hacha bekantu shagig atu mezid ika b'nai. The machlokes here, if you're koinish shagig atu mezid, Rab Meir holds you are, and the Chacham holds you not. So you have a right that Rab Meir holds by the Rabbanan. You are not koinish shagig atu mezid. Yet in our Mishnah, the Rab Meir holds you are koinish shagig atu mezid. So that is the case. I'm sorry. I'm not focusing on. Yeah, he has to pay double, which we count him, even though it was only shagig, that he's got to give a new tashlumin. So frag to Gemara, hachi ashta. You have no kasha there. Hasam gabra l'shlumi kamachaven anonekim v'leniksi. I don't understand. Yes, normally you guys are shagig atu mezid, but you did something wrong. Here, a guy's coming with good intentions. He wants to pay back. He didn't realize he wasn't paying back properly. He's only doing good. Someone who's only doing good, how could you punish him for that? Zok to Gemara. Zok Rashi. L'shlimim mechaven. V'adam karshu. He's a good guy. What about Matama V'dama Menazach? He's a good guy there too. No. Matama V'dama Shoyig Einoi Misasik V'toiva. What he did was bad. He did something bad. He was Matama, somebody's product, not doing something bad. He may not have been doing bad on purpose, it was by mistake, but he did something bad. For a Maisa that's doing something bad, that's something that we cancel for. But when your Maisa doing something good, you're paying it back. You rather didn't know that you were paying back the wrong thing, but you're actually physically doing a good thing. You're paying somebody back. How could you punish somebody who's coming to do something good? I mean, the best way to ruin someone's motivation is to slap him down when he thinks he's doing good. If he knows he did bad, but he did it by mistake, okay, that's something that's worth even knas because he did something bad. So that's the Gemara's distinction. Why here Rab Meir wouldn't be knas constantly. Tashma dam. We're running very. I gotta go. Let's talk later. I just want to finish. Tashma dam shenitma v'zarkoi. What happens if dam became tummy? Now the halacha is in the base of mikdash, anything that becomes tummy, the tzitz is meratz. So, for instance, someone brings a carbon chatos, and before they have a chance to make zrikas dam, and the dam becomes tummy. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to continue with the carbon. You know why? Because even though it's tamei, it will be mechaper because the tzitz takes care of that. So what happens if the dam became tamei? V'zarkai, and the kohen spritzed it anyway. B'shoigig hurtza. If it was b'shoigig hurtza rashi that tzitz meratza umuter basar b'achila. The carbon is a kosher carbon. However, b'mezid like hurtza. If the kohen knew, I mean, it's actually a whole shayla in the Gemara there. What does b'mezid mean? Did he make it tamei b'mezid, or he knew? He knew that it was tamei, even though it became tamei by mistake, and he spritzed it, even though he knew it was tamei. That's how we're going to learn now. Amazing. He knew it was tamei, the kohen, and that maybe you shouldn't spritz it, and he spritzed it anyway. Loy hurta there, the tzitz is not meratza. So right away over here you see. Let's finish Rab Meir first. So Rashi says, "Mejid loy hurta midrabana, midaraisa." Of course, the tzitz is meratza no matter what. The tzitz is meratza if you spritz blood that's tummy. The Rabbanan says like hurtza, uchnasahu lesser basar b'achila. We will not allow the kohanim to eat the basar. Aval bailam eschapru. You can't ask the bailam to bring a new carbon if lemaisa the kapara was good because the tzitz was maratza. It just means we don't let the kohanim eat the basar. V'hach zrikas mezid by spritzing dam that tummy b'mezid. It's an isur derabbanan. It's only a derabbanan. You know why? The midiraisa zork lechatchila that tzitz maratza. Midaraisa, you're allowed to spritz because the tzitz is maratza. It's only in a very midrabanan. And what is the halacha? We're not going to shayga to mezid, right? The shayga kurza, the mezid loyurza. Amalach Rab Meir said no. So the Gemara said it's not a kasha. You might have a kasha if Reb Meir holds that you normally are geyser shagel go to mezid. Why over here not? Reb Meir, let's think about it. Haki hash. Let's think about what's happening over here. Hasam gavur lechapur kamachav. He did a b'shoigig, and he did again. He's doing a good thing. The kohen was doing his avodah. He was here to purify the carbon, to do his job. So he's here doing a good thing. And now Nekem v'Nikne say, you want us to cancel him for that? He's actually doing a good thing. Unlike by Metama Medama Menasach, even though it's a mistake, but he's doing something that's bad. Gewaltig. So Rashi tells us something interesting. Rashi has a kasha. Nowhere in this brisa, it doesn't say that this is Reb Meir talking. Maybe this is Rabbi Yehuda talking. Because Rashi, that's what the Gemara could have answered. The lav stam mishnah. This is not a stam mishnah. It's a brisa. He b'menachas. The Gemara wants to say that even if this is Reb Meir, it doesn't contradict us because once again he's in the process of doing a good deed. Tashma, dam shenitba, dam that became tamik. I'm sorry, we did this right. Tashma, another kasha on whether or not Reb Meir is gosher midrabana. Hamaiser b'Shabbos. If someone takes ma'aser on Shabbos, so you're not supposed to take ma'aser on Shabbos midaraisa. And Rashi tells us that isha shvus derabanan. Midrabanan, you're not allowed to separate trumas and ma'asers and be misak on your parents on Shabbos. Kiditnan b'meshilim, like we learned in Seches Beya. Elohein mishum shvus shel mitzvah ein magbiin trumas and ma'asers the mechse kimisakin. It looks like misakin. Here Rashi says, here we know it's Reb Meir talking. It's v'hach hama'aser b'Shabbos is a stam mishnah, and we know the stam mishnah is the no Reb Meir. Which will be the next case, Matvel Nami Yisur Derabani, and that's also going to be an Yisur Derabani. Rashi is preparing us for the next Tashma. Why is it an Yisur Derabani to Tailo Kalim? Mipnei Shanira to Misakin Kli. V'chalhani Ramini Derabmeir Derabmeir the Kanesh Lo Derabani. So now we're going to have a series of questions. We said according to Rabbanan, according to Reb Meir, your kindness Shaigal to Mezid. We're going to bring a series of halachas where you see Reb Meir was not kindness Shaigal to Mezid, and we're going to answer why he did. So Tashma, Hama'aseh b'Shabbos b'Shogig. I'm sorry? Yes. So Hamaiser b'Shabbos b'Shogig yochel b'Mezid lo yochel. Once again, you see Reb Meir is not kind of Shogig to Mezid. Hachiyashta Hasam Gabriel is a kunika machabin, and on Lika will say he's coming to do ma'ashur and He's doing a good deed. You don't punish a guy for doing a good deed. Tashma Hamat bil Kalim b'Shabbos b'Shogig yishtamish ben. He can use them on Shabbos, but b'Mezid lo yishtamish ben. Hachiyashta, the same question. He wanted to be Mataris Caleb. And now, like of Nicholas, now we're going to back off from Reb Meir. Now we're going to ask a question of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda by the Rabbanan says you're not geyser, right? By Matama Madama Manasach, he says you're not geyser. And we're going to find places where he is geyser. The Tanya we learned. Naflu, Vinispatsu, what was the case? You had a geyser perech. You had delicious nuts. Nuts are not bottle. Since these geyser parrots, I'm not sure exactly what type of nuts they are, but any nuts today are so expensive. I understand why they're not bottle. I feel be'elef, right? I feel be'elef mipnei chashivus never chash. But if they get crushed, then they're a bottle. So I just want to share with you something very, very simple. I don't know if this is halacha l'maisa, but when we learned your day in Lakewood, we learned that halacha l'maisa. The halacha is ein mevatlan isur lechatchila. So we know why you have to check leaves for bugs, because no matter how tiny it is, they're not bottle because they're a beria. A beria is called a dover choshev, it's not bottle. But what if the bug becomes pulverized? Then it's no problem. You're allowed to eat it because it's bottle. So what if I have broccoli that has bugs inside it and I blend the broccoli? So now any bugs in it will be pulverized. The halach is you're allowed to eat that broccoli, no problem, because it's bottle. But the question is, what if I wasn't planning to eat the broccoli blended? I wanted to eat it whole, but I have a problem with bugs. So I blended it. Why? So that I could eat it. Now I'm doing it for the sole purpose of being mevatel iser. That's why I blended it. Normally I wouldn't have blended, but now I'm blending it because I want to be mevatel the bug. Then there's a rule of ein mevatel iser lechatchila. You're not allowed to blend it if the reason why you're blending it is because you want to crush the bug. But if the recipe required that it should be blended anyway, then maybe there wouldn't be a problem. I'm not saying this halacha l'maisa, but that's how we learned when we were learning your day in Lakewood, that halacha l'maisa we learned you would be allowed to use fresh broccoli if the recipe called for it to be completely blended. Don't. I'm not a pasuk halacha l'maisa. It will not get you out of hell. To quote me, Achamei Veshim, that I said it's good. They're just going to say, "Oh yeah, you pass like him, you'll go with him." So I wouldn't bank on that. Zok to Gemara. So what happens if it's nispatzu ha'egoizim shel orla? So we're talking about orla. So the problem here is if a nut of orla mixed into my nuts, now all of these nuts are going to be asur al orla. That's a very big loss. But what if they got crushed? The achrach naflu l'soich shel heter, and then they did fall in. So now when they fell in, they weren't a davar choshev anymore. They're pulverized already. But naflu tchila the achrach nispatzu. What if when they got mixed, they did asur all the nuts? Why? Because they were whole. And then v'nispatzu, and then they got crushed. Echad shoygig v'echad mezid lo yalu. It doesn't matter if you crushed them on purpose for the purposes of being mevatel the iser, or even if it happened by mistake. Lo yalu, it doesn't work. Devei Reb Meir. So Zak Rashi, echad chapotan shoygig shaloi nischaven k'dei levatel chashivuson ula aloishen v'echad masayim k'dinorla. You didn't intend to be mevatel. They happened to have gotten crushed. Ben chapotan mezid shenischaven lakach. You actually were trying to be mevatel iser l'chatchila. Lo yalu, we don't allow you to eat this. Afilu belef, even if you have 1,000 of heter keneged the one of iser. The konnis Reb Meir. Reb Meir Kansid. That's good. Reb Meir Kansid by Drabanan. It's Rabbi Yehuda that we're focusing on. Rabbi Yehuda, the konnis Reb Meir Rabbi Yehuda shagi got amazing. Right? Reb Meir Rabbi Yehuda, and this is going to be our problem. Rabbi Yehuda normally says by Drabanan not konnis shagi got amazing. Here you have the Rabbanan, and Rabbi Yehuda is konnis shagi got amazing. So frek the Gemara, frek Rashi, v'avagav the hak aliyah. So Rashi is not asking; he's explaining. We're trying to demonstrate this is a question of a derabana. Because if you by crushing these nuts, it's only a derabana issue we're dealing with, not a deraisa. Because technically, even if the nuts were full and complete, they would still be bottle. The midiraisa in chilik ben chashav l'she'enei chashav ta'koil bottle. This thing that a davar chashav is not bottle is not midiraisa. Midiraisa, even a davar chashav is bottle. The chsiv achrei rabam lahatos. So here we have a problem. Reb Meir is geyser shagala to mezit even by adir rabbanon, and Rabbi Yosy, Rabbi Shimon, I remember shagig yalu b'mezit lo yalu. Fact them about hacha, the midaraisa chad with bottle. Midaraisa be'atzem it would be bottle anyway. So it's only a shayla of adir rabbanon of here. Rabbanon who the geyser v'kakonis Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda we held is not kindness. Normally he's not kindness by adir rabbanon, but here. A person has a massive problem over here. He has thousands of dollars worth of nuts that just became usher because one nut fell into it. So there's a big incentive for him to make believe that it actually got crushed by mistake and not on purpose. So that's why he has to make the knas. As Rashi says, that's why Rumei luschaben. So therefore, here, even though normally Rabbi is not going to by Rabbi, here he is. Now Rabbi Yosy had Rabbi Yosy. Now we mixed Rabbi Yosy into the mix. Rabbi Yosy over here says that you're not geyser shagi got to mezit. We're going to show you that Rabbi Yosy holds you are geyser shagi got to mezit. Ditnan nitiyah shal orla v'shal klai karem. You had a plant of orla and klai karem. Shenis avu b'nitiyah isacheros. They got mixed in with other plants. Hareza lo yilake. You cannot cut them. Why is Rashi? Because manchi b'mkaima b'mechuber. As long as a plant is growing, chashiva. It's called a davar choshev v'loy betela. So if you have one plant that got lost amongst many other plants, it's a davar choshev. You don't know which one it is, and now they ask for all of the plants. If you illegally pick its pears and mix them in with other pears, and now it's not mechuber anymore, so now you made it that it should become bottle, it's also. So the and if you did wrongfully, yalu be'echadu masayim, you could still say it's bottle. But you can't do it on purpose. If you did it because by mistake you didn't realize, it'll be good. But Rabbi Yosy Rabbi Yosy holds that even if you purposely wanted to do it, it will still work. You see, it's fair Rabbi Yosy it's not about geyser shagi to mezid. It's mezid itself. In the early brisa we said b'mezid lo yalu, because by mezid it's not going to be bottle. Here Rabbi Yosy says even by mezid it's bottle. So you have a steer in Rabbi Yosy. Zok that's not a kasha, because ha'itmar Allah, we already learned Amar Rava chazaka ein adam oiser es karmoi b'nitiachas. As Rashi says, nobody in their right mind would want to answer his entire vineyard because of one plant. Nobody would ever plant one thing amongst a kerem which would in fact answer his whole kerem unless he made a clear sign on that tree, so it's easy to identify this is the one that's usher. Because if he didn't, since this whole scenario is such an unlikely scenario that one plant would get mixed in, one plant of Orla will get mixed in with other plants. It's such an unlikely scenario. The Rabbanan didn't make a gzeira. So really, technically, the Rabbanan should be machar by Amazing. But since this is such an unlikely case, we're not worried. Avol nefilas is a beheter. When you have a nut falling into other nuts, that's a much more common occurrence, shchicha, and therefore, thereby Mazid it will be us. Nobody is going to do something so foolhardy and plant one thing in his kerem which would potentially aser his whole kerem. And therefore, it's such an unlikely thing to occur, they don't make any type of isurim for it. Okay, we'll stop here, even though we're barely scratched the surface of the daf. We have most of the daf to go, but the time ran out because I came late. So I apologize. And Misham, tomorrow we'll catch up, or not tomorrow, but the next couple of days. Okay, Gavalti. What I'm going to do is at the 9 o'clock shir, I am going to finish the daf because we don't have a hard cutoff at the 9 o'clock shir. So if anybody wants me to finish, I'll finish then. I'm going to get to the Mishnah on top, the three lines on top. But the early morning shir tomorrow, we're going to start from where we left off, and I'll have to, yeah. Yes, I'm going to get to the Mishnah this afternoon. Right. So at the 9 o'clock shir, I'm going to go there. But I'm not able to do that now. And this, which means I'm not going to be able to say any jokes the next couple of days on the morning shir because I'm